Hi, Anne here from Backroad Buddies, and the video we want to share with you today is about Kenmare, Ireland. To get your bearings, this is the country of Ireland, and Kenmare is down here in the south on the west coast. Now we were coming from Kilkenny over here, and we had a rental car, so we drove from there down to Kenmare. Here's a closer view of the area around Kenmare. Kenmare is down here, and we were coming in this road here from Kilkenny, and we kind of skirted around the city of Killarney and drove through Killarney National Park. So on the way we actually stopped and toured Muckross house there in Killarney National Park, as well as Muckross Traditional Farms, and that was interesting. And then we stayed 3 nights down here in Kenmare. Now here's a closer view of Kenmare itself. We stayed at a nice little place called Reenagross house, which was over here, and most of the kind of old town area and shops and restaurants are kind of in this triangle here. So the first full day we just explored around town. We went by the Cromwell's bridge, which is an old little arch bridge, and then kind of wandered around town. And then we came down here to Reenagross Woodland Park, and there were some trails through there, and we walked all the way out to this peninsula and back. And we happened to hit it at low tide, so this whole bay was pretty muddy. And then we came back through town and went over to check out the ancient stone circle over here, so that was rather interesting. And then later in the day we actually walked back to Reenagross Park and went out to the peninsula again, this time at high tide, so there was a lot of water in the bay. So that was that day. Then the second full day we were in Kenmare. We actually drove back up to Muckross house and went for a hike. So from the house you kind of came over and we went up to Torc mountain and then around and by Torc Waterfall. So just a really lovely hike. And then checked out the gardens there. And then on the drive back we stopped at Kissane sheep farm and saw a sheepdog demonstration. So that was a lot of fun as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Kenmare, Ireland.
had over 100 acres of land, which was a big farm for an Irish Catholic family. They would
So, chisel for drawing in a mouth, and then this kind of half round chisel for kind of shaped feathers making this area on birds. Punch for the eye, an eye punch, put that round that way. And I'm just going to go with a chisel again. Whoops, I'm going to drop that further in.
just listen to the different pitches, you'll hear the different sounds, and that's the different commands of the dog. We'll explain when we get closer. But you can see the dog is travelling 30-40 kilometers an hour through the rocks and stones here, run into a lot of trouble with injuries and all stuff like that. So we have to breed him and train him here ourselves. That was the stop whistle. That's her left, which is our right, it looks like. So you have to be in the dog's left or right always. So if you're not good at your right and left, you'll have struggle working dogs. So you always have to be in the dog's right and left. Now we're the same, it's fine, our right is her right. So if the dog goes ahead is then our right is the dog's left. It's pretty confusing if you don't know. The Border Collie is the world's smartest dog. You can teach him to do the most. People get these dogs in cities, in little apartments, and they think a little walk in the evening is going to cut it. These dogs need a lot of space. They'd work all day. Once they give them a little break, they'll go again. Give them a little break, they'll go again. There's no end to these working dogs. So they get into a lot of trouble when they're not done right. Chasing children, chasing the postman, all kind of stuff like that.
Thanks for watching. If you want more details about our experiences, look in the description below for a link to our related blog posts, so check that out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Ta-ta for now.